You are just a machine, an imitation of life. Can a robot write a symphony? Can a robot turn a canvas into a beautiful masterpiece? That was one of the lines that Will Smith as Detective Spooner said in the movie I, Robot. My name is Jürgen Moors. I am a coach, a strategic advisor, and a consultant. And I made it my mission as a guardian of manufacturing to secure the future of manufacturing by educating individuals and supporting enterprises. Now, I started off with this quote because today I want to talk about robots, because robotics is one of the innovative technologies that will boom in the years to come. And on the other side, I want to focus on the individual. Why, as an individual, as an entrepreneur, would you focus on new technologies? And how do you do that? Let me position myself about a decade back. You could find already robots, you could find welding robots in the car manufacturing. But it was the age where the first trials with robots for inspection and maintenance in the oil and gas industry and in the chemical industry were coming up. And the question was, can we embark as a company there as well? I was working for a chemical company. And how do I bring my colleagues in this huge company, this large manufacturing site so far that they will step into this? So I had to make sure that it would be more than just one robot, because it's so easy when you make it very, very practical and narrow it very, very down to one example to say yes or no, a believer versus a non-believer. So I started to think about, okay, where do I want to go? What's the vision behind it? And how can I take those people into the world of robotics without in the beginning already starting to say the chemical industry and robots, this will never happen. So I had to make sure that the aspect of robot always stayed as long as possible behind. So I had the opportunity to talk to a lot of my colleagues in an internal session, and I was able to give a presentation down there. And I started it off like I Have a Dream, the I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King. I have a dream that. And then I showed them a snake that crawled up a tree and then into the branches. A picture from nature that everybody could relate to because we could see it in National Geographic, for instance. And then I made the transfer and I said, well, if this is possible, and if you look at the tree and you look at the pipe racks and how they are on our steel beams, basically the steel beam is a steel tree on which pipes are resting. And now imagine that this is not a real snake, but a snake robot. And there were pictures where you could see a snake robot going up a tree, an actual tree. So the step towards going up our pipe racks and using a robot was not that far anymore. The same example I used from snakes that were swimming in the pond. The water snakes that we all know, the ocean snakes. And I again showed them the vessels, the tanks that we had. And then I put in there the so-called snake. And I showed them an actual snake that was swimming in a pool, in a swimming pool. And then I showed them an example of a huge wall. And against this huge wall, you see a lizard going up. And then I showed them the steel walls that we have in tanks and pressure vessels. And then I showed them how certain type of robots with the aid of magnetism also crawl up. So the distance was not so small. So now you could see that something that happens in nature and something that they could relate to is also something that could happen to our industry. So the bridge, or the gap basically between nature and the industry, I bridged with this vision of where we could go to. And then I showed them already the robots that already existed. Some were, of course, still in demonstration phase or in laboratory phase and still had to be developed. And there would be some time before we'd actually get to the point where it would be industrialized. But impossible was no longer on the table. It was possible. The question is, how long did we take, or would we take? And that's how we also embarked in most of the projects, because the goal was for us to, as an organization, and for me as a person, to bring us forward by embarking in European funded projects to get from this demonstrator phase or a very low TRL level into a higher TRL level before you could actually start deploying it on our side. But taking away the first problem of something is impossible and making it with these parallels possible made my life a lot easier, because now I could frame from, okay, something is possible, it is no longer in the world of impossible, and now we just have to put a time frame and we could experiment. And you could also tell from, okay, what we will get. You've seen those robots. Those are demonstrator robots. They can fail. They will not run your task from the first time. They can fail. So the whole story of how do we bring robotics into the oil and gas, or especially in this case for me, into the chemical industry, I framed by creating a certain vision of where I wanted to go, bringing the parallel with something people knew in their daily life, and then cross over to what it meant to the industry itself. But I took it that way, away out of the world of impossible, and I brought it directly into the world of possible. And from that point of on, I start working on not something that is there tomorrow, but there's something that will be there in the future. And this is something that you actually, as an entrepreneur, as a person, if you want to bring forward education and if you want to bring forward manufacturing, especially in your organization, and bring your organization forward, what you have to be able to do is create a certain vision, think long-term in a strategic way, and tell a story. Bring people behind that vision with a story that they can believe in, that they can go for. But a story that is not trying to sell you something that will not be there in a year. Not over-promising. Be realistic. It's not a problem. People are ready to invest in a longer term as well as a person. And that is how you can take on board people inside an organization. And if you look at an organization, of course you have the enterprise as itself, but it's made up of a lot of people. And when you take this first hurdle as an entrepreneur, then you take already a big hurdle. And with this story, I showed you how you can take the people on board. In another video, I will show you how you can take, with the same story, the business or the enterprise on board as an intrapreneur. So, dreaming, bringing the dream into reality, and showing that impossible has moved into the world of possible is a very important step if we want to bring manufacturing forward. If we as entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs in large organizations, want to bring manufacturing forward.